Now let us talk about the supervisor. As a postgraduate students, you will have at least one supervisor to guide you through your postgraduate study. This is a must, and it is the requirement of a university for a students to have supervisor for their postgraduate studies. Some postgraduate students may require more than one supervisor, probably 2 to 3 supervisors. Among the supervisors, there will be one main supervisor, and the rest it will be the co-supervisor. The co-supervisor is assisting this main supervisor in supervising your research work. Normally, they provide the technical inputs to help the students through the postgraduate study. However, the final decisions in terms of the research directions and even the methodology used will have to be decided by the main supervisor. For a typical full-time master degree, the research project will take about 2 years. As for the PhD, it will be 3 years. Throughout these durations, you're going to expect yourself to meet your supervisor frequently. As the postgraduate studies is different from the undergraduate studies, there is no predetermined schedule when you should meet your supervisor. It will be very much dependent on the needs of the students as well as the initiative of the students. The supervisors are typically in the ever-ready mode. Whenever the students is ready for discussions and supervisions, the supervisor will come in to assist the students. Now, one of the most common questions asked by the postgraduate students, it will be, how frequent should I meet my supervisor? You will see some students barely meet the supervisor, probably once in a few months. Now, the questions behind this is that, do I need to meet my supervisor frequently? Let's say weekly, 2 weeks once, 3 weeks once, or once in a month. You might also observe your fellow colleagues or your seniors, some meeting their supervisor very frequently, while some seldom go and see their supervisors. It seems that there is no standard answer for this. That's why this kind of questions being asked by the students. Before I answer these questions, I would like to draw your attentions over these related questions. We're going to answer through all these questions one by one, as there are some fundamentals that I need to establish before my final answer is given. Now, the first question is, what is the purpose of having the supervisor? Or more specifically, why do you need a supervisor? Why the university insists that you need to have at least one supervisor to supervise your research project? First, not every lecturer can be a supervisor. To supervise a master's students and above, the supervisor will have to be a PhD holders. You will need the lecturer of 1 degree higher than the degree that the lecturer is supervising. This is for the main supervisor. As for the co-supervisor, a master degree lecturer can also be the supervisor for the master degree, but normally a master degree lecturer cannot supervise a PhD postgraduate study. If you see the mechanism here, being a supervisor, bare minimum, the supervisor must have the experience going through the entire process of the postgraduate study of the equivalent degree. Having those experience, the supervisor see the entire process. This will give inputs to the students in the planning and the design for the research program. Another requirements for the supervisor is that the supervisor should have the relevant technical background, as the supervisor will need to give technical guidance to the students throughout their postgraduate studies. Let's say now the research topic crosses different disciplines or fields of studies. This is when the co-supervisor will be required. When one supervisor alone cannot cover the entire scope of the research topic. When this happens, the expertise of the supervisors in the related fields will be properly utilized, and technical guidance can be properly given to the students. Now coming back to what is the purpose of having a supervisor. You will need their advice. They have experience that you do not have. They see the entire process, which at the moment you cannot see what is happening in the future. They're going to assist you to plan and design your research process. They also provide you technical guidance. Sometimes they will need to make decisions in terms of the methodologies to be used in order to carry out the research. Another thing about the purpose of the supervisor is that they give you third-party opinion. Sometimes when you are too focused about your problem, you may not see the entire picture and you overlook something. Therefore, you need a competent third party to help you overcome this. Having a supervisor will increase your chance of passing your postgraduate study. That's why you will need a supervisor for your research study. Now let us go to the other question. We talk about meeting the supervisor. Now what does it mean by meeting the supervisor? What is the definitions of meeting the supervisor? Personally, I don't feel that it must be always face-to-face. However, you cannot totally avoid face-to-face meeting with your supervisor. I cannot imagine supervising a student throughout the 2 years to 3 years postgraduate study without having the face-to-face meeting once. Now the question is it a must that every time meeting the supervisor has to be face-to-face? Personally, I feel it is not necessary always face-to-face. Now this meeting, must it be in the office or in the lab? Personally, I feel it can be anywhere, as long as there is no disturbance and distractions. It can be any place where you and your supervisor can communicate freely without any interruptions. Ideally, it needs to be somewhere quiet where both of you can sit down properly. Probably you will need a table for you to make some notes regarding the discussions with your supervisor. You can also do the meeting virtually through various platforms such as Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, and etc. This one is more formal, where you can see your supervisor, you can share your works, both of you can discuss freely over the informations and content displayed through the platforms. Of course, you can meet your supervisor through phone conversations or through the chats using smartphones, but this is a bit informal. Normally, I do not recommend that, as it is not effective, very hard to recall, and there are a lot of constraints during the conversations later. Now, when we talk about meeting the supervisor, we are not talking about the formality, whether you need to meet your supervisor face-to-face or through virtual meeting or through phone conversations and etc. To me, that is not the main focus. The main focus here is that during this meeting, both of you you and your supervisor are able to deliver the responsibilities. Your supervisor can carry out his responsibility in supervising your postgraduate studies, and you are also able to carry out your responsibility to be accountable for your research project. There are responsibility of the supervisor, and there will be responsibility as a postgraduate students. This kind of meeting will have to have both of you and your supervisor to be able to carry out your responsibilities. Now let us talk about the mechanisms of the meeting. It can be very formal. You do the presentations to the supervisor, and supervisor comments on your works. Or it can be more casual a bit. There will be discussions between you and your supervisor, and the discussion modes is the most commonly used among the postgraduate students and the supervisors. Regarding the topic of the discussions, it shall be predominantly technical related. That means it is related to your research study. Next, let us look at the third question here. Why do you need to meet your supervisor? This one is easy. You are seeking opinions in your research design. You are also seeking for the technical guidance. There will be decisions that both of you will have to agree on, particularly in terms of the research design. For example, choosing certain research method and foregoing the others, and etc. These are the common things that you can expect from your supervisor's meeting. However, many do not know that there are more. You will need to update your progress to your supervisor, as it is a part of the responsibility of the supervisor to monitor your progress. You will need to brief your supervisor regarding your findings as well as your observations while carrying out your investigations. Not only briefing your supervisor in terms of your findings, sometimes you will need to advise or educate your supervisor in the technical aspect as well. Probably you might want to ask, shouldn't be the supervisor more knowledgeable than the students? Why do you need to teach your supervisor regarding your research? You need to know the fact that the reason a research is being carried out, it is that there are some research questions need to be answered. And the nature of research is, it is usually something new, novel, and not yet known by the research community. Therefore, you don't expect your supervisor to know all the answers for your research questions. The mechanism is not teaching. The mechanism is supervising. The reason the research is being carried out, it is that both you and your supervisor do not have the full answer for the research questions. Your supervisor may know more than you at the early stage due to their vast knowledge and technical background. They also know more than you in terms of how the research is being carried out. However, as the research goes along, you will realize there will be a point that you gain new findings which may not known by your supervisor. This is totally logical because as a full-time postgraduate student, let's say now the typical working hour is 8 hours per day. You are investing these 8 hours thoroughly onto your research, which at the same time, your supervisor, who is also a lecturer, has the other responsibility other than doing your research work. Now the time invested on your research topic by your supervisor will not be as much as you have. Now, as the research project progresses, you will find yourself learn faster than your supervisor. However, you will still need his expertise and opinions in how to complete the research. As his advantage is he has the experience of going through the entire cycle of the research. Now you are in the middle of the cycle. Now this is a part of your responsibility to educate your supervisor and to help your supervisor to quickly pick up and learn along together with your research project. It is only by increasing his technical competency, the quality of the decisions from there onwards can be significantly improved. These learnings, it will be from the both sides. You are learning from your supervisor and your supervisor also learning from you. This will have to stand on the mutual trust between you and your supervisor. Don't be stingy about the knowledge. It is only when you share the knowledge between you and your supervisor, you will see the impacts and the chemistry out of this mechanism. Another reason why you need your supervisor, it will be as the mentor to you. You will see a lot of supervisors also spend effort in motivating the students. There must be a reason for that. You may not appreciate it, but this is one of the important things that the supervisor see over the postgraduate students. They've been through that process. They know how stressful it is. That's why you see a lot of supervisors, they give motivations to the students. Some even take initiative to help the students to relieve the stress. Normally during the supervisions, the supervisor also at the same time observing the students in terms of the level of the stress. And then necessary action shall be taken to help the students going through these postgraduate studies. To make it simple, seeking opinions, taking the technical guidance from the supervisor, those are the common reasons that you need your supervisor. But don't forget, it is more than this. You will need to help your supervisor to learn along the way, build his competence level in order to yield better quality research. And there will be a mechanism to motivate the students, mentor the students, and helping the students to relieve the stress. Next, we talk about what to do when you are meeting your supervisor. These are my recommendations to you. You will need to update your status in your research. Show your progress and also demonstrate that you have improved or progressed after the previous meeting. You know that there is usually a gap between your meetings with your supervisors. Let's say you are meeting your supervisor once every 2 weeks. Within the 2 weeks' time, your research project proceeds. New things has been learned. There will be new updates in terms of your current status. You will need to brief your supervisor regarding the latest progress of your research. Second, you will need to brief your supervisor regarding your previous discussions. It was 2 weeks ago. Are also many routine jobs by your supervisor. Your supervisor will need some time to recall what you have discussed with him during the previous meeting. Give time for your supervisors to recall, help him to remember so that he quickly stay in the picture for him to better carry out his supervision job. Next, you will need to outline your problem, which you will need to seek his advice. Don't just outline the problem and expect your supervisor will give you solutions directly. You are not undergraduate students already. Normally, there won't be any spoon feedings. What you can do here is you need to do some homework before meeting your supervisor. Come up with several alternatives to overcome the problems. Discuss the alternatives, the pros and cons with your supervisors, and let your supervisor to decide. If you are confident enough in terms of the solutions, you may also share your opinions and your preference to your supervisor. See if your supervisor have the other opinion. Now the response of the supervisor, it will be either selecting one of the alternative that you have proposed or totally come up with another solutions. Normally your supervisors are not bound to your alternatives. They have been trained with critical thinking skills, and based on their experience, they have a bigger pictures in terms of the alternative solutions to overcome your problems. You need to be humble at this stage. Show your eagerness to make your research project better. You want to solve the problem. Sometimes the solutions may seem to be best to you, may not be true actually, because sometimes you cannot imagine what's going to happen at the later stage of your research study. Therefore, the advice and the opinions from your supervisor will be very valuable. And then during meeting, you will need to teach your supervisors on the technical aspects. We mentioned about this while answering our previous questions. Next, how should you treat your meetings with your supervisor? After you've gone through the 4 questions previously, more or less you understand the mechanisms of supervising your research project, as well as the purpose of it. You will need to be proactive and take full advantage of this mechanism. Meeting the supervisor is not supposed to burden you. It's supposed to be a resource to you. Your supervisor will be one of your resources to assist you going through your entire research program. You will need to change your mentality from wanting to avoid meeting the supervisor, feeling stressed to meet your supervisor, change to you enjoy meeting your supervisor, taking advantage from meeting your supervisor. The following are my suggestions to you in dealing with your meetings with your supervisor. First, you will take this as a mechanism to facilitate yourself to be more disciplined throughout your research study period. If you meet your supervisor regularly, every time you meet your supervisor, there must be some new progress. If you set yourself to meet your supervisor regularly, now you cannot allow yourself to be non-disciplined and lazy. You will have to make sure yourself to progress and grow before the next meeting in order to demonstrate that your research work is progressing. You will need to always do your homeworks before meeting your supervisor. Take the regular meetings with your supervisor as the milestone. Set the target for the next meeting. Then you work accordingly. And the next thing you do, your research project goes smoothly, on track, and without delays. This is especially when you see some postgraduate students rarely see their supervisor, and they feel tensions in meeting their supervisor until their supervisor seeking for them. Most likely, this kind of students are not making any progressions since the previous meeting. You don't want to do that. You want to graduate soon as possible. You want a confident pass in your postgraduate study. In that case, you can take this as a mechanism to facilitate yourself, to make yourself disciplined throughout your postgraduate study period. Now, the second thing is that you can make advantage of this system is that you make the discussions with your supervisor as formal as possible. You don't have to every time do the PowerPoint slide for the presentations, but at least you use the right mediums of language. Let's say now your university has the mediums of language for the proposal, defense and viva in English. Then make sure every discussions with your supervisor will have to be done in English, even though you can use your mother tongue. Why do you need to do that? You take this as a training ground for you to be familiar with the terminologies in the research, as well as the technical aspects of the topic. And you take this as a training ground for you to speak well with the medium language before your proposal, defense and viva. This is especially when you are non-native English speaker and your proposal, defense and the viva will have to be done in English. Normally, students will choose to use their mother tongue to communicate with their supervisor. I would suggest you to use the formal language. Even if it is broken English, you try your best to communicate with your supervisor well. Take this as an opportunity to make your conversations in English fluent. Now, the third thing that you can take advantage out of this mechanism of meeting the supervisor, it would be to minimize the information's asymmetry. What does it mean by the information's asymmetry? It is when a parties have more information over the other. Taking you and your supervisor as an example, your supervisor has the advantage over the background knowledge as well as the technical know-how related to the research and the research topic. He had the experience. He also has the relevant skills, and he has been well trained with the critical thinkings. These are the things that you will need to gain and learn from him as much as you could. Your mentality should not focus on how you are meeting his expectations and how you cannot meet his expectations. Your mentality should go beyond this. You should think, how do you keep up with his technical knowledge? How can you be comparable to his expertise after you've gone through these postgraduate studies? You would like to learn as much things from him as possible. Not only the technical aspects, also the relevant skills. Observe how he carried out the critical thinkings. See how he supervised the students. What are the justifications for any decisions made throughout the research, and so on and so forth. Don't waste this opportunity. Give up all this and only seek for the direct answer from your supervisor. And then the second thing about the minimizing the information's asymmetry is that you have some additional knowledge regarding the research topic that you need to educate your supervisor. You will need to help him to quickly recall. You may only have one supervisor, but your supervisor can have more than one research students. Whatever he said, you may be able to recall every single words, but he will need time to recall what statement that he have made to you and what are the other statements that he makes to the other research students. Give him some time to sort the things out. You will need to help him to keep up with the knowledge growth so that he can give you better decisions for your research to make your research project better. Now that we have covered all these 5 questions here, it is time for us to discuss about how frequent do you need to meet your supervisor. Let me give you a scenario here. This is the typical timeline of a research students. You start your research. Somewhere along the way, you need to do the proposal defense. And then you need to carry out your testing and investigations. Then you need to write your thesis. Once you've completed your thesis writing, you need to submit your thesis and go for the viva presentations. Now let us see the activities that you go through the entire research project. From the start to your proposal defense, normally you are doing the literature review, you are learning, you are exploring, and you are doing the planning for your research. This is the stage that you know little about your research. Not only you know little about your research topic, you also know little about what you're going to do in your research. This is the learning stage. And you will have extensive supervisions from your supervisor here. The meaning of extensive supervisions is that you will be meeting your supervisor more frequently. The gap between the two meetings, it will be shorter. You will need the technical inputs from your supervisor for you to kickstart your research, to help you to understand the basic fundamental concept related to your research topic, and you will need the advice from your supervisor for you to design your research program. You will need to gain the entire pictures of the research from the supervisions of your supervisor. And then later, once the research design has been set, this is when you carry out your investigation program, experimental testing, and executing your research studies. At this stage, it will be more towards the testing and acquiring the data. Let's say you are doing the experiments. Preparing the specimen takes time. Setting out for the testing takes times. Carrying out the testing also takes times. Since you have already have everything well planned here, you already know what you're going to do and how you're going to carry out your research. This will be the stage of the implementations, and normally you require less supervisions from your supervisor. You may not need to meet your supervisor as frequent as you used to be, but you cannot totally not meeting your supervisor. There will be less supervisions from your supervisor here. Later, once you have acquired the data, you need to carry out the analysis for the result, discussions, findings, and etc. This will be the stage of thesis writing, doing in-depth study, developing models, analytical models, and etc. This kind of things are very technical heavy, and you will need to make good use of the vast knowledge of your supervisor as well as the technical know-how regarding your research. You also need the advice from your supervisor in how to write a good thesis. Therefore, there will be an extensive supervision from your supervisor at this stage also. With that, you are expecting yourself to meet your supervisor more frequently, and the mechanism of meeting your supervisor is likely to be more flexible here. Sometimes face-to-face, sometimes through emails. What is inevitable? It will be sharing the informations and contents and acquiring the comments from the supervisors. In terms of the mechanism of meeting your supervisor, most likely the first two stages here, it will be fully face-to-face, depending on the situations. Probably this one, it will be more often in the office. Sometimes you meet your supervisor for the testing in the lab, And when it comes to checking your thesis, there will be transfers of documents through emails for your supervisors to check your thesis. Now finally, related to the durations, that you need to regulate your meetings with your supervisor. The durations, it will be dependent on the students and the situations. Now, if you do not have any ideas in terms of the durations, probably you could consider this. You are meeting your supervisor once every week, or the most once every 2 weeks here. As for this, you are meeting your supervisor once every 2 weeks, or the most once every month. And then here, you will need to meet your supervisor once every week, or the most once every 2 weeks. Based on my personal experience with the students, normally there will be a delay start for this thesis writing. Very often, students overshoot this process here, underestimate the process of writing the thesis here. And when the students are in rush, trying to meet the deadlines for the thesis and the viva, the entire process here will have to be speed up. In order to speed up the process, most likely the students will need to meet the supervisor more often, submitting the words to the supervisor for the checking. With that, this answered the questions, how frequent do you need to meet your supervisor? I hope this can bring to you a broader perspective in looking into the matter of meeting your supervisor. All the best and good luck.